Okay, well, good afternoon. What a beautiful, beautiful day this is. I especially picked this day out. Okay, so today we're going to go out to where the village of St. Marie was located. That's our first stop. And then we're going on to the Oak Grove schoolhouse where my mother and Ed actually went to school. Ed will be speaking about that today. And then we're going to proceed over to Montom Hill, a little bit different than I said before, but we'll go to Montom Hill and look over what used to be the glacial lake out there, you know, for many, say like 10 to 12,000 years ago. The French, when they first saw the area, they thought that was a prairie and that would be just excellent agricultural area. Well, not so much, but we'll talk about that over there. Then from there we're going down Huckleberry Road and then proceed past where Chief Highknocker second burial was located. But we'll go all the way to my house because it's on a hill and, you know, just not really safe, you know, as cars zoom past. Well, Huckleberry Road, not too many cars go down there, but occasionally, you know, with a beautiful weather like this, they'll be coming down there. But we'll talk about what all happened there, and then we'll proceed in back of my house to the bonfire, which is great. Looking forward to it.
You're going to go down 5 minutes?
Well, like I said back at the library, I'll let you guys ask me questions and then I'll see if I can answer. Okay, anybody with questions about St. Marie or any area around here or the people that lived here? Right in back there was where the church of St. Mary, the fountain, was located.
What's the fountain?
The fountain is across the river, and that was the fountain that Father Marquette blessed. It's still running today, so Father Kruba in the Catholic Church here said since it's been ever running, it's still considered blessed water, holy water. And it's still flowing.
Oh, and is it something?
So is that an artesian well?
Is it something?
Yeah, it's
Well, it's on private land. It's Cliff Mashuta's land. But if anybody is interested, and actually right now with the high water you really can't get there. Plus there was a beaver that happened to build a dam on a ditch line, and
Damn beaver.
you know, that's true. I heard that before. And you know, backed up the water so you couldn't get to the springs. Actually, it's a series of about 12 springs there. Just incredible, like big pots in the soil, and then you see in the middle, you know, percolating water. Yeah, it's all natural. You know, you know, basically, the native people, a little bit of the story there, Father Alloway originally planted the cross on that high little knoll there. And Father Marquette saw the native people, you know, basically worshiping the land because it was a very sacred land. It was Mother Earth providing water year-round and never freezes. Plus, there's a lot of watercress that grows on it too, which is rich in vitamin C. You know, very good. And so, with Father Marquette seeing that, so he took the cross and then planted it over there. Yeah, basically, Ed and Glenn Gorsuch, my son, and myself, we put up another cross there. Actually, that was the second cross that was put there, but it's about 400 feet away from where the original site was. Mainly, I put the cross where it is today, so everybody would have access, would be able to walk there, because I figured it was just too much of a wetland there that people probably would, most of the years, like the past 4 or 5 years, wouldn't even be able to get there. With that, you know, it was put the cross there. I've taken many people there, mostly during the wintertime where it's just more accessible. And so Cliff gave me permission as long as it's not hunting season where I could take some people back there. Hunting season, totally out.
The cross can be seen from the Fox River by canoe, and if you happen to be riding with Jerry, he'll give you a tour on his rendezvous Voyager canoe.
Right. It's named Fox of the River. The first maiden voyage was the Fox River. In fact, when we finished it May 20th of 2005. That many years ago. Wow. And actually, Karen and Mike did take their family on well, it was a 4-hour trip, I think. And it was lots of fun, a lot of history along the way, too. Really interesting. And
Jerry, can you tell us about the geography of the area where we're standing, what was around here as far as buildings go?
Sure. Actually, the church was there over by the lilac bushes and the trees that we see. The hotel was there. The museum that is now in Princeton was originally right across the road over there. It was a general store. It was Shaw's Landing General Store. And actually, just doing a lot of research, like St. Marie, St. Marie also had a post office, and a lot of the post office were located in the general store. So maybe, you know, not only was it the general store, but maybe it had the post office there as well. You know, no records show that, but why not? And then there was you know, 2 taverns here. There was 2 blacksmith shops. There were, well, in fact, the road, you know, let's see, 1851 or 2, I think there was a plat map. Everything was platted out. All the streets were named, and just incredible sight that you know, this village would have become if it had a chance. Right here, actually, there's like a row of trees there. That was the main center of the town, and they had like 4 blocks that was designated as just a public access. Would never have any buildings on it, but for different community activities they would perform there. Well planned out. It was really incredible.
And who is the developer of this site? Who wanted to really make it into a city?
It was basically a reputation, and last year in spring, I had the luxury of talking to his descendants. Colonel John Shaw actually wound up here and reestablished this as a village of St. Marie. He was a war veteran of the War of 1812, and this is something that a lot of people don't know. He served under Colonel Daniel Boone. Did you ever hear of him? Well, Daniel Boone by that time was getting pretty old, so he resigned, and then his son, Nathan Boone, actually took over the command, and he also served under Nathan Boone. You know, really incredible. Hard to believe that we have a bit of, you know, Daniel Boone right here.
This was supposed to be like the Princeton.
Yeah, it was actually a much busier town. In fact, I found an article that was written, and in 1850, this was the port of destination for all the paddlewheel boats, all the people coming into the area. This was the port that they would seek out. Now, all along the shoreline here was the port. But this village had the opportunity to have a second port. And further on Huckleberry Road here, there was a second port. Actually, the sailors preferred that second port more than this one. Why would you think that they would do that?
The river's right next to the road.
What?
The river's right next to the road almost.
Well, yeah, but the road wasn't all that prominent at that time.
Does it-
But there was a...
What about the 2 foundations on on 5 Minute Road, you know, about the old two old
Oh yeah,
foundations?
again, there was people that lived there and so forth. I don't know a lot about that, but the foundations are there, and there was a smokehouse there. But then just getting back to why there was a second port. Again, this was a port of destination. They could load, unload cargo, but
Deeper
then all the new people coming into the area, they would have 2 different ports that they could take off. And there was a family here, Perry was their name. They came from New York, arrived at Milwaukee. They built the first piers for shipping there. And eventually they went to Oshkosh. They boarded a boat and came to the port of destination right here. And they lived here, and guess what they did? They built some piers here too. And so this was just a beautiful place to end up, and it brought in a ton of people all the time.
How many, I'm sorry, how many people live here?
I think the tax rolls, this would be surrounding area and here, there were about 500 voters. At that time, it was only the men that could vote.
So it sounds like this road then was the main street of the town, correct?
It probably was, and all those streets going down to the river. This one was the central part of the town, and that was a big main street there.
So about how far is it up to the next port here?
It's like a half mile. Where you see the cemetery next to the road, that was where St. Marie ended. Actually, the name on there, State Center Cemetery, wrong name. It was actually where the northernmost section of St. Marie was. So it was part of the village of St. Marie.
So why
Jerry,
did
I
this
heard
fail?
you speaking before about Colonel John Shaw is buried here.
Yes.
Can you tell us where that he's located?
Why, sure. It was actually fortunate when many years ago when I first found the cemetery and did a lot of research on each individual tombstone. I took a picture of the Shaw stone there, and basically a lot of people never knew where he was buried. Well, that was where he was buried. The cemetery is in the middle of the woods, and Dave Dajinski, when he owned that land, found out that I wanted to go in there, of all groups, with a 4-H group. 4 hours we went in there. It was a cold, windy early April day, but in 4 hours, all the kids, parents, and grandparents, we cleaned out all the brush and all that, where you could only see, well, probably from me to you guys here, any tombstones there. Otherwise, there was too much brush overgrowing that. And then, we cleaned it up, and while we were cleaning it, we found 4 other headstones that had fallen over and was covered up by debris. Well, probably it's been like over 75 years, or maybe even 100 years, that anybody been in there. And so we uncovered the tombstones, and one real prominent tombstone there that we uncovered was David Cassidy. And of all things, that his obituary was in the internet. So reading it, and pardon the term, I would never use this, but this is what was written. He was killed in a saloon shootout here in Wisconsin by Grand Rapids, Wisconsin. Anybody here where Grand Rapids, Wisconsin is?
Wisconsin Rapids, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. It was renamed Wisconsin Rapids. So the mother had to take a buckboard the end of February all the way to Wisconsin Rapids, retrieve the body, bring it here, and have him buried here. He was killed in 1868, and it was a saloon shootout there, and as it read, it was he was killed by a half-breed. People at that time, they did not like any mixed blood, especially anything to do with Native Americans. And so he was already, you know, the person that shot, it was, you know, I don't know what happened with the court case, but I'm sure that he was convicted. And anyway, she had to bring the body back here and have it buried. Unfortunately, the tombstone toppled over and was covered up by 6 inches of debris. But fortunate, you know, the 4-H kids, as good as those are, they found that, hey, there's something underneath this leaves and shrubs and all that, and so we dug down a little bit, and here was a full tombstone, all intact, and really incredible.
And about how far is that from where we're standing?
You see that hill? Just over the hill, it goes down into a ravine, and then as it comes up, in the middle of that woods is where that cemetery is located. Unfortunately, you know, today, Dave, you know, lost his land there, Dave Dujinski, and the new owners at first, oh yeah, you can go in there, but then all of a sudden they said, well, not so fast. You can't walk in here anymore. And then, fortunately, we was able to get our access inside the cemetery last year with the Shaw family here, and it almost brought me to tears that these tombstones were so far eroded and, you know, just falling apart, and you know, some were completely gone already, you know, that you could not read the names, or the tombstone were just totally disintegrated with you know, the time factor on that. And we're talking about most of the people were buried there in between the 1840s to 1889 was the last burial there.
So why and when did this community fail?
Well, by the 1880s, well, even before that, by the 1860s, several factors. Number one was the Civil War. A lot of people were drafted or they volunteered for the war. Many of them never came back. So that really compromised, you know, who's going to farm this land and so forth, or do the business here. Another factor was they had a wooden bridge here. Floods tore the bridge out, and then a decision was made, well, they'll build the bridge in Princeton. The other factor, the railroad came through, and the decision was to go into Princeton instead of here. Now, St. Marie did have a train depot, but it was over by the sand pits back there, so quite a ways from here.
And then there was also some politics involved with Colonel John Shaw, correct?
Yes, yes. You know, he did make some enemies, and well, yeah, had a pretty headstrong, you know, way about himself. He died in 1871. So actually, my ancestors were here at that time. 1870 is when they arrived here, and I figured, you know, I'm sure that they probably, you know, communicated with each other, you know, sometime. But he was, again, not only a war hero of 1812, but then during the Black Hawk War, he actually escorted Black Hawk because he was respected by Black Hawk, and then you know, basically was, well, they respected each other. During the War of 1812, they fought against each other. So, in fact, Colonel John Shaw was named by the Native Americans Ashapin. Anybody know what it means, Native American? Ashapin? It means raccoon. Why would they, you know, call him the raccoon? Well, if you think of a raccoon, they're small, but they're wiry, they're vicious fighters, and you don't want to tangle with them. Colonel John Shaw. He was only about 5'5", maybe 160 pounds at most, probably less than that. So he was short, but he could fight. He was, the reason why he was a war hero, he worked as a spy. He went behind the lines during the war, and he would be able to tell exactly where the enemy was, and then many times the forts that were being trying to hold on to, but by the British was fighting, but it was Native Americans that were encouraged to fight for the British, so they were in trying to annihilate whoever was in the fort. But Shaw, during the night, many times was able to escape going around the lines and so forth, and get everybody out safely, without getting killed. So, what a guy. So, any other questions about any of that?
What tribe of Indians lived here then? What tribe of Indians?
Well, actually here, they talk about the Mascoutin Indians in Berlin. Well, okay, there were probably some there, but the first main settlement was right here. The biggest settlement of Mascoutin were over at the village of Marquette, and they were terraced up there too. There was also Miami and Kickapoo here too. And they all came from, the Kickapoo and Mascoutin came from lower Michigan. Why did they leave Michigan? Well, it was the Iroquois. Basically, they had contracted with the English and whatever scalps, and that's where scalping really became popular, is they had to prove that they killed somebody to get their bounty. And so that was done quite a bit. Plus, they took the women and children as slaves, back to New York State is where their main land area was. And
was John Shaw's wife a Native American?
Yes. In the story, says that he was never married. Not in the traditional sense, he was not. But he had a Native American lady that he was with for over 50 years. He had 9 children. And and actually here in the transition, I forget the name of the family that took over his farm. Povbacher's, Ernie Povbacher and Naomi own the farm up here now. That's where Colonel John Shaw's farm was, and it's just amazing that he had all this land at one time, and then car coming. And then he, actually sold off pieces and so forth. And
I was trying to think of the name of the people that owned this.
yeah, and then actually I found out that the person's wife was the last name was Shaw. So I think that's where it went. Shaw sold this piece of property here, this little triangle here, to the Catholic Church for 2 cents. So basically donated the land to the church.
A couple more coming this way.
Oh yeah.
One that way too.
Holy cow! This doesn't happen on this road.
They hear there's something going on.
Right.
I heard there was a ruckus out here. Everybody's got to come see what's going on.
Right.
A lot of good duck hunting over here.
Oh yeah.
Just try to close to the tree.
A lot of people go down to the river too, fishing and stuff.
Well, yeah, and basically, if you can believe, all along this whole shoreline was the port, and the paddlewheel boats would be lined up there, loading and unloading all the cargo, all the passengers, and so forth. So that it was a,
We got UPS.
Oh yeah.
Is that shoreline
You're
pretty firm
popular,
on this
Jerry.
side now, all the way
Yeah,
around?
and it's the deepest part along the shoreline. That's why it made just a natural port. Down the road too, it was the deep part there where they were parked at. Oh, I mentioned that the sailors wanted to go to this other port, And I don't think nobody knew that. Ed, did you know that?
Nobody wants to say it.
Probably that's it. Well, the sailors, as soon as they landed, they went across the fields to this one house. It was the Shundle sisters.
That's where that basement is on the 5 Minute Road.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And
That's what we heard. That is what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
the one on 5
basically,
Minute
what
Road.
I tell
I knew
most
it.
groups is that
I didn't hear wrong.
they were such great cooks that these sailors, they ate, and they just fell asleep there. And sometime the next day, eventually they came back to their boats.
Jerry, you talked about the building that is the Historical Society now was moved from here.
Oh yes. Yeah.
From the construction of that building, it looks like it's 2, maybe 3 pieces. Do you have any idea how
2
much
pieces. The actual warehouse part was built on when it was there,
So the front,
but it was cut in half, and so the 2 pieces were moved by oxen into Princeton.
okay.
Really incredible. Nothing went to waste. In fact, the church was abandoned, probably as early as 1900, but it was 1909 that they disassembled all the bricks. And today, if you look at the pizza factory, all the outside bricks came from this church.
So the Historical Society wasn't the only building that ended up in Princeton from here.
That's correct. Actually, Bill Zamzo, that used to be a member of us, the big, huge house, the White House next to it was a house here in Huckabee, or in St. Marie.
There was also a house, was used by the Green brothers as a grain elevator and for different businesses on the other side by somewhere in the area where Kelly White's office is.
Right, and also there's about 6 other houses that were moved from St. Marie into Princeton.
Wasn't the main house for Wackel's funeral home, didn't that come from here also?
I'm not sure about that.
I thought I read that.
Well, it could be. I don't know, beyond my research. The UPS guy. Oh, maybe he'd just drop off the box here.
To the shuttle
Maybe
sisters.
recognize a few people here.
He'll read off a few names.
So any other questions? It was really a very prominent town. 1850 was its heyday, and then it kind of slowly fell apart after the Civil War. Really kind of sad. If you look at the land area today, this side, the other side, and then you look at Princeton, you have one side that's pretty good. Funny bird noises. I don't recognize it. Well, hi, this is Jerry. Hello?
Want to extend your warranty on your car?
There was something like that. People maybe calling
Where we are.
You were saying about Princeton, it's one side.
Yeah, oh yeah, and like you look on the other side of the river, it's all marsh, never to be developed at all. It's wetland. So here, both sides of the river is more than possible to build on and so forth. It's much better land area than Princeton actually was.
You said there was a bridge here that washed out. What year did it wash out? And the other question is, what year did the railroad end up into Princeton?
I think by 1875 the railroad was here in Princeton.
And the bridge here was gone by then? What year did the bridge here wash out?
Oh, before that. It would have been probably I'm just guessing, probably in the late 50s, early 60s, something
So
like that.
The decline was on before the railroad was the final
Oh yeah,
straw.
yeah, final straw was the railroad for sure. But just land development would have been much more, advantaged here. You have sandy soil, not great for agriculture, but for building wise, I think it would be good. Just speculating myself, one year we had a really bad drought here, and the field was planted with a crop, and I could see squares in this field where there probably was at one time basements and foundations, because there was square areas that nothing was growing, and there was other areas that was growing, but you could almost tell there were buildings there at one time. Most all the again, they were looking for agricultural land, and everything was filled in, and all the stones was field stone foundations that would have been taken away. So it's kind of interesting just observing all those different things like that. Any questions?
So are these fields like a wood?
No, actually there was hardly any trees here.
Really?
At that time, all along the shoreline, no trees. It was mainly for the shipping, and Native Americans would be burning stuff. There was areas of savannas that oak trees and other hardwoods would grow, but then all the other areas would be grassland. Why would we want grassland instead of trees?
For animals.
Yeah, right. And in Wisconsin, we always talk about all the buffalo or bison, the bison, after on the other side of the Mississippi River. Were there any buffalo or bison in Wisconsin? There were thousands. There were thousands.
A fast car coming.
Yeah, really fast. Out to get me. That was my son. He's always a jokester. Anyway, by 1836. The Black Hawk War was 1832. By 1836, there were no mice or buffalo left in Wisconsin. The elk, there were more elk than white-tailed deer here. The last elk in Wisconsin was killed in 1886. Now we got them reintroduced up in the Hayward area, and unfortunately there was, I think, one elk that came down to Jackson County or something like that this last fall. Then somebody accidentally.
Well, they got another herd in Black River Falls too.
Oh, okay.
They started up a second herd there.
Right, and
The original one's Clam Lake herd. That's
but
Black River
the one
Falls.
that made it south, they killed it. Said, "Oh, I thought it was a deer."
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just,
The difference between an elk and a deer. Okay.
That person should not hunt again.
yeah, if anybody makes a mistake like that, they shouldn't be out there with guns.
Yeah.
Jerry, what can you tell us about Hamilton?
Well, it was a very short-lived village. Hamilton was, you see that row of trees and those pine trees over there? It was on the other side of that. And most of the people worked for the river boat companies. That was their livelihood. When the riverboat business went downhill after the railroad came in, that's when these towns started collapsing as well. What other things in Hamilton? I don't know a lot about that. St. Marie was like a half mile up the road, and right up to that tree line there. That was the extent of St. Marie. It was a pretty large village. State Center is beyond that, and that was a real small village as well. But here again, a lot of the men worked for the riverboat system, and as that was collapsing, everything just collapsed for the village too. Why was it called State Center? At one time when this was a territory, actually that would have been about the central part of Wisconsin, well, would have been Michigan territory at the time. Any other questions? Okay.
That must be your signal.
Introduce yourself for us.
I'm Wargula.
Okay, and where's here?
Where's here? School on County J.
Thank you.
One Rising's area. And here's, like I said, here's some of the kids. And then in the spring of the year, we always had a picnic. If you had kids or no kids, you were all invited because you were a taxpayer in this area. We had the Huckleberry closed their school, and that school was moved out of the Huckleberry back in the 40s, and it was moved. I thought when it was moved down, and Brightonfeld's live in it right now near the boat landing. Right across, and Princeton has about 3 schools that were moved from the area here into Princeton. Same thing with Mount Tom School. There was another school that those 2 all consolidated and went to school here, and that all. And when they closed the school here, we had a few guys on the board that, you know how it is. They talk about it, that they're paying too much taxes and stuff, you know, and that all. And so they said, why don't we take and close the school and consolidate with in Princeton then? Well, it was in the, I would say about 46 when they closed the school down. It was converted into a house and stuff, and that all after that. And, yeah. I had 3 brothers and a sister that went to school here. We used to walk about a mile down the road. We lived down the road here about a mile, so, and that also. And like I said, Carly's ex, I don't know if anybody knew Bobby Zanto. Arnold Schwark, he's still alive yet. He lives going into Princeton. On J. Arnold Schwark.
Green and white house on the left.
Yeah, Arnold Schwark, yeah. And then there was Donnie Prackle, he's gone, I think, already. He died a few years back, and that also, yeah. And his mother went to school here with Joyce Lashinsky, and Freddie Folsky. Freddie Folsky went to school here. He was an 8th grader when I was probably about 2nd grader when Freddie Folsky, and we were just checking here to see if that was your mother or not, and that also, yeah.
And what's kind of funny about Freddie Folsky, you look at both the group pictures, girls are over here.
I can tell you a few stories about guns too. At that time we had a couple of hooligans in school. I wouldn't say hooligans, but they were outspoken. One was a Kirstoviak, and the other one, I was just trying to think, lived off this way, and they brought 2 revolvers to school. And they shot them off in the woods over back here but the teacher caught them at it, and they had to write an essay about 2 pages long. And then they got kicked out of school for about 2 weeks. And that also. One of them, like I said, there was a Christopia. They lived where the Gensky lived down. Oh yeah. Yeah, there. So, and the other one was, I remember, they lived on the back road up here, Swedish and that all. And I don't know if you know Elmer Krieger. He ran the theater in Princeton for a few years. He was treasurer of the school here. And at the time when the school closed, we still had money in the treasury. Because I was working for Elmer Krieger at the time. I was in high school, but I still worked for Krieger and that all. And he says, what do we do with the money we got in the treasury and that also? They ended up having to give it to the school in Princeton. So.
Was there one teacher or more than one teacher?
One teacher.
And how many students?
About 13, 14.
Do you remember your teacher's name? Do you remember the name?
I started out, the funniest thing is, I started out with Mrs. Bethke, and my mother-in-law, this is a true story, my mother-in-law was in the nursing home in Ripon, and there was a woman in the bed right side of her at that nursing home, and her name was Bethke. And I went in to visit my mother, and I says, you by any chance wouldn't know Irma Jane Bethke? Yeah, she says. This woman says, yeah, that was our daughter. And they came in to see her mother and stuff, and I got to talk with my first grade teacher, and that was all of 60, 70 years that I hadn't seen her. I've got pictures of her, but and that all. She was, see, at that time, school teachers in country couldn't be married, and that all. And but during the wartime, we had some of you have heard of Mrs. Marshall, Joan Marshall. She was one of my teachers, and we had another one of Wilma Gorski. He got to be a superintendent of schools and stuff around the neighborhood. He lived on the street in Princeton, Wilma Gorski did. And then there was another gal. Now I can't. Wait, I had, and that. So about 3 years was about all the teachers used to, and then they used to go on to another different school, and that also.
What is your book?
Huh?
What is that? What book?
This is a book that Elmer Krieger, the guy that was treasurer, he printed three of these books. A life of his life. This book here has his life all the way from a kid on up until he graduated from high school. The Historical Society. They were given, most of these books were given to the Historical Society in Princeton there, and I don't know if there were 3 copies of these books, and I being a guy that works for Elmer Krieger, I've got all 3 copies. Wow. Yeah. So any questions about the country schools?
You said there was one of the schools that was to Princeton.
There are 3 schools, houses. Where you're going to the Piggly just by the railroad. This one here. The second one from the corner. No, this one here is on the left. That ain't the one that they're remodeling. This one here is, you know where the bottle gas company is there? That house right here. Right there. And then there's 2 of them on Hare Street that were moved in. Okay. Now the one from the Huckleberry was moved in already, moved out of the Huckleberry already in the 40s. On 73 Breitenfelds, right across from the boat on 73, that house there on the right-hand side, Breitenfeld, was living in it. That was a schoolhouse from the Huckleberry that moved out. And And the other one, like I said, that lives there by the gas there, come from Montana, where Bobby Walters lived, the schoolhouse was. And see, now you take it from the Huckleberry. We didn't gain very many kids across all. There was Jerry Disterhaft and Schwark, so that was about 3 that they joined that we gained in the school here. And most of the kids that went to the school here were right around here. There was Carly Zix, who was here, Freddie Folsky, Santos, and Frank Sieberts, and then us. My folks had 4 or 5 kids, and that all. And that was mostly the ones that were here in the school.
So it was 14 kids, all grades?
Yes, all grades. And I can tell you something. I learned more with music. We had a music class. We had all of the classes. Each kids, the year that they were there, they had their own class. And we had a music class and everything. And I don't know if you ever heard of Ranger Mac from out of Madison. Mm-hmm. Okay, we had Ranger Mac come up here. We didn't have electric here, but we had a battery that we played the radio by the battery, and we used to listen to Ranger Mac over the radio. And that all, yeah.
For some of our younger listeners, what about indoor plumbing?
We had indoor plumbing here.
Ah.
There was a holding tank. There's a basement under the schoolhouse, and there were 2 about 300-gallon tanks below the floor. That the girls and the boys, and that was enough to hold a year. And then we had a dry well out in back there, and when we'd start the school in the fall of the year, they would flush those tanks all out, and that all, yeah.
That's where the grass is.
Those tanks would turn up 500 gallons. They were enough to hold, and that all.
How long has the building been sitting empty? How long has the building been empty?
Oh, God, about 10, 12, 14, 15 years. I don't know, something like that. Yeah. It's been a quite, what? I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
It is currently owned by a couple who live in Illinois.
Yeah, see, they drilled a new well back there and everything, and that they weren't using the well. We had a well on this side. And in the fall of the year, when we'd start school in the fall of the year, some of the people that had kids here, or some of the ones that were on the scoreboards, used to come in here and spend the whole day scrubbing the floors and getting everything. And we used to get a pump jack and put it on the well over there and pump the water for about a day almost, and then take a sample of it and take it into Doc Miller to have him check the well to see if it was good.
So those kids got in trouble for shooting those guns, but you never caused any trouble.
No, but me and Mrs. Marshall, Mrs. Jerome Marshall, she was the only married teacher that we had. Me and her never got along. I got sent out on the steps one day. My mother says, "Why didn't you come home?" Well, Mrs. Marshall taught in a lot of schools, and country schools, and she ended up teaching in high school. There's a lot of stories about her.
I had her.
Maybe you were the only one that didn't get along.
Daddy, did you ever graduate? Oh, good for you. All right.
Yeah, I graduated. I'll tell you something. Here's another story.
Prime the pump.
We were the first ones, or the second ones, to graduate with Calhoun. What they call it? Calhoun and that all. When he got up on the pulpit on graduation day, he says, "This hasn't been the best class that I ever had graduated, but it was the most interesting one." But the reason was for that, we had a shop class down below, and there was a wooden post holding it up. And we had some of the guys were kind of wrong bunches. If I named them to you, you probably would know them, but Uh,
So you wanted to shot the guns?
no. Those were gone. Those only were almost 8th graders or something, and they were gone. These were some that came out of Catholic school. You know, Catholic school is supposed to be nice and proper. We whittled them one house down in the shop, and I don't know, a year or so after that, those finally gave way, and the kitchen sank where the home economic, that floor sank a little bit when that closed broke.
Did you say we whittled on that?
Yeah, we whittled on it. And the thing of it is, they talk about getting welding back in school and that. We had a welder in school, and in the old school, see, our school was on the square, and we had a welder in a class, welding class there. We had a phony welder there. Yeah.
Can you talk about the fire that happened here?
I don't really. Somebody was here.
Yeah, it was, when it started fire, my dad just happened to be coming through, and he was trying to help the family get out, and got everybody out except the youngest one. They couldn't find him. The smoke was so thick, and that was way before the fire department came out here. And then, yeah, when the fire department came here, they tried to find the child too, and they couldn't. And they found that he died. So the youngest child in the family.
Yeah, he was in my kindergarten
class. Everybody else made
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Those,
Yeah, that was about 1970, I think.
in there, yeah, they live around here. One of them is married to Bernard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of the boys. Yeah, they live on Hawaii now. Yeah.
What's your best memory of the school here?
Well, probably the picnics. Everybody in the neighborhood, if you had kids and no kids, they had a picnic here that everybody was invited. And come spring of the year, we always rented the lawn here and that all, and had a little winter roast. And we always had Christmas programs that we used to put on for the public. And that we used to have plays and stuff that we used to practice quite a bit in that also. Yeah. So like I said, I liked country school better than I did almost. With music and stuff, I liked more music here than what I did after I got into like the Catholic school and even high school and that all. We had music once a day.
So how many years did you go here?
How many kids?
No, how many years did you go here?
I went here, I think, till the 7th, well, about the 6th grade. My brother, Donald, he went all eight years in that all. So, yeah. There were quite a few of them that graduated from here. I know Jerry Disterhaft's wife graduated from here, and Lachey's graduated from here, and that all. They were, and that all.
Does anybody have questions for Mr. Wargula or Jerry?
Anything anybody wants to know? Carly Six just lives down the road here a little ways, and that was his son was here.
Frank.
Frankie. Yeah.
Okay.
At that time, we lived just down the road here at Manty Place. It was known as the Manty Place. There was a gal here from the Huckleberry on the 5-minute road that was here, and the land used to go right up to past their place. I used to get the cows from way back in where that gal has got a house back in on the Manty Place. So,
Okay, I think we can, pack up and go to our next site.
Thank you, Mr. Wargula.
By Montown Hill.
Where are you going?
area, so they had to supply sand to make the castings. So the St. Marie pit here, there's an urban legend that there's a boxcar of sand underneath the 7th green at Lawsonia. And that's always been like an urban legend, but not for our family, because Grandpa Al, who started the company in 1919, took a boxcar off of that rail line, took it down the roads to Lawsonia, and then took the sand and filled it in. And we've had people that have witnessed that, or their grandparents did, and confirmed that. So that story about the boxcar of sand under the 7th Street Lawsonia has been verified, and it came off the St. Marie sand plant.
All right.
And why did they do that?
Why did they do that? They wanted to build up a green because it's sort of like a Irish, like
Links.
More of a European thing. So they're trying to change a little bit of the topography of the golf course when they were building it. So.
That boxcar, I know I remember when I heard the story about that.
When they moved it, yeah. And that's because my husband's, it was Al Gelhar. He had he started the sand plant outside of Berlin in 1919.
Yeah.
And he was a huge golfer. He was golfing at Oshkosh Country Club way back in the teens, and everybody thought he was crazy. He would hit golf balls over the top of his silo at his farm. But they were just big golfers. So when Lawsonia was going in here in 1930, he was thrilled because he could golf closer to home. So that's why he helped them build that golf course. So that's my story about the St. Marie
got a question.
That's excellent.
He's got a question. Do you know anything about the train car that's derailed laying down in the marsh?
Off of St. Marie Road.
Oh, okay.
I only know the sand. I
only know the sand. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's silica sand, and the silica sand that comes through here raises up in this area, so you can get to it. And then in other areas of Wisconsin, there's a ribbon of it that runs through that. It goes too low for you to mine.
Oh.
So that's why Badger Mining and A.F. Gelhar are still 2 miles apart in Marquezan, because there's a hill of sand that's come up. You know, the formation of sand. So there's only 3 silica sand companies in the state that do what they do. Badger Mining, A.F. Gelhar, and there's one at Portage.
And the thing of it is, they track it, how do they get it down to Texas? And there's a place in Texas that shires have a place, and they,
Flash trucking too has a place in Texas.
Ship it out for the oil drillers.
Fracking.
Yeah.
Wisconsin sand is very round. The sand in this area is round and it's hard. And so for fracking, Badger Mining was sending Wisconsin sand to Saudi Arabia too. Because it has to be a certain roundness and hardness to let the oil flow through it, but so that the stone doesn't crush the sand and close the veins. So Wisconsin sand goes all over for fracking.
Yeah, because I was surprised. We drove up to that place where they had
sand tanks.
Yeah,
and everything,
yeah.
So there's a huge history of mining sand in this area. If you walk down the Mascoutin Trail, the old Dubersine sand plant siding is still there from when it was a train trail. It's still.
So they literally buried the whole car and everything,
They buried the boxcar, then they filled it with sand, and then they built the 7th green on top of it. So to change the topography of the golf course. So if you look on a map, you can see exactly where they took that boxcar from the St. Marie. They just ran it down the road, right, like just across the street onto Lawsonia.
Excellent example of repurposing.
Yeah.
1929. Worked.
I'm
That's
sorry.
my story about St. Paul.
Can you just introduce yourself for the camera again? I think I missed
I'm Pat Grahn, a native of Berlin, and I'm with the Ripon Historical Society.
it. Thank you.
Car.
Well, actually, I'll have Monica talk briefly
Get out of the way here.
that she used to live in a house that used to stand just around the corner here. So
Sure.
here's Monica.
Sure. I lived at the house which unfortunately burned down. It was beautiful woodwork. Workowskis lived up here, and then Carly and Loretta Preckle lived up here on the left, which I think somebody had said their daughter got married in that.
Our son and daughter-in-law got married there in their last fall.
Okay, and what I remember is, because I moved off off of that place when I was around 8, but it was a real big thing for my parents to give me a $20 bill, and I could ride my bike up to Carly and Loretta's and give the rent check, because it was $20 a month.
Okay, mind if I ask,
Yeah.
what was your maiden name?
Oh, Hebby, H-E-B-B-E.
Oh, Heavy.
Leonard
okay,
and
okay, yeah,
James.
yeah.
And my dad remembers Mrs. Marshall, and I had Mrs. Marshall
Yeah.
in 7th grade, and I had to get down, it was in the 70s, I had to get down in front of the class because my skirt.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, you had to kneel down, and if the skirt touched you, you were okay. If it didn't,
Yeah.
well, that was another question.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, otherwise, you know, this is really a beautiful area as far as glaciation goes. If you look over, you see it fairly flat. At the time, you know, like in you know, in the late 1600s, 1700s, the French thought this is prime agricultural land. It's nice and flat, and they seen the grasses growing so well. There was very few trees. What trees we see today was not there at that time. They would have burnt over all this grass. But, however, it never came to be. Agricultural land would never be there because it was too wet. You know, many times it would flood out Car, and I think it was in 1980s. It was during the fall, and there was a huge fire that consumed all of the Puckian Marsh, but it also went across the river and burned down a lot of the White River Marsh.
Actually, that fire came, that when we came off of that Puckian Road, that farmer, my uncle lived on that farmer just as he came off that road right just here. That fire came right almost halfway up to his house from the cow pasture. It's the fire that came from all the way on the other side of the
Yeah,
it jumped the river and came that far up to Wally's place.
Hunters?
Yes, yeah. How it was they had a pail, metal pail full of charcoal, and after they left their blind, the wind was really, I don't know how many miles an hour it was.
Oh, she was strong.
Like probably 50 miles an hour. Well, they blew over the hunting blind, and with the charcoal, it sparked the whole fire, and it started. There was, I don't know how many fire departments were fighting it all around the whole area, but they never lost one single house.
That was like, what, in the early 80s, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, I was coming home.
We got evacuated out of here by the fire department.
Right, right. In fact, I was working in Fond du Lac, coming home, and I saw all the smoke, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is getting close to my house. Well, there was roadblocks. The first block, they wouldn't let me through, and I said, my son's in the house. I need to get through. So I had to go way around the other side of Huckleberry Road, and they were not letting me through there, and said, look, I'm going through. And I finally made it there. And then, fortunately, the fire department was hosing down my roof because there was a lot of embers falling down from the wind and the grass and so forth. But
The funniest thing,
house was
That
good.
son was a baby.
the funniest thing is, Folskis and everybody had duck blinds dug out over there. The DNR didn't know where they were, and when they would come in there with their buggers and stuff like that, they flew into the ponds that the guys had for duck blinds, or for hunting duck on the Puckian over there. There were more of them than anything.
But more importantly, you know, going back, 10,000, 12,000 years or more, all that you see here, including the tree line area, that would have been all water. And then the glacier is actually, this was considered a mountain at that time, would have been all the outwash buried this mountain. And so now it's just nice hill, but at one time it was a sizable mountain.
Well, at one time they tried crushing limestone on the other side of here.
Yeah, and it was not too good, and they couldn't make money, so they dropped it. Yeah. Thank goodness. At least kept the hill intact that way.
Why is it called Mount Tom?
Well, it was you know, basically a person that was here first, and you know, I just went by his name.
I don't know.
And that's the best I heard of it. I don't know. But you know, for many years, you know, even going back to the early maps, always noted this as Mount Tom.
Yeah, as long as I can remember.
Yeah. So, not too good of an answer to you, but I think it did come from, you know, somebody that was in the area, and his last name was Tom.
Jerry, you were fortunate enough to be on top of one part of this. Can you tell us what you think might be up there?
Well, oddly enough, on top of here, it's fairly flat. There's agricultural fields up there, very good in having crops up there. But more so, going up there, my daughter and I, you know, one time we went up there, and I couldn't believe the wildlife. Turkeys, you know, just not, you know, a group of turkeys, but there was hundreds of turkeys. Don't go hunting up there. It's all private. But the other thing that's really substantial, and I'm sure you experienced it, in the spring of the year and in the fall of the year, the snakes come here and they crawl up there and they hibernate over the winter. So what for years I remember people thinking, oh, there's, you know, rattlesnakes here and all kinds of dangerous snakes. Not true. Yeah, and it was you know, they call them fox snakes. Yes, they are in excess of 50 inches long, but they're harmless. You know, basically their main prey are mice. And so, what would you rather have, you know, a large snake or mice actually ruining everything, damaging everything? So I choose the snakes anytime.
The house that burnt over here, in the summertime, the snakes used to come up. There was an open porch there. The snakes used to come out and sun themselves right on the front porch.
Oh, yeah.
They'd get down in the basement too.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, you have that.
They'd be in front of their
snakes
garage.
Are very scary. What's kind of unique feature about them is they look like a rattlesnake. They're spotted and so forth, and you know, they'll coil up and they'll protect themselves, and they'll shake their tail, and it sounds, you know, like there's a sound from them, but it's only if they move against something and vibrate off that. Otherwise, there's no rattle on them at all. On many of the nature centers, they'll have the fox snake as to demonstrate how to handle snakes, and they become very docile and actually easy to handle. But don't handle them if they're out in the wild, because they may do something else to you. And even though they're not poisonous, but a bite from a snake is not pleasant. So also, going back to the early French, they were up here, and they actually shaped stones, and it's probably about this high, and I'm not sure if it held a flag, or, and I'm thinking they put up crosses so much of the time to honor. Now, the native people never lived up there, but that was a place of celebration. There's, you know, even rock formations up there that they built many generations ago, and it's still there. But the rock formation that I'm talking about that the French made is still up there as well. So I really honestly think that it probably held a cross up there, and you know, nobody knows for sure.
No, we've never, I know we've walked that up a good many times and never run into it.
Yeah, I did, and I seen the stone shaped, and it's this high off the ground.
I know Sandrick, he was one of those archaeologists.
Oh yeah, right.
He was up there too, but he didn't find anything.
No. But basically it was a place of celebration. They would come there at certain times of the year to celebrate, certain, events and so forth. But they never lived up there.
Freckle on most of that.
Right, right. That's true. So, any questions whatsoever? Okay, so actually what we'll go through is on Huckleberry Road here, the first road to your right. We'll go down that. Watch out for the curves, a lot of curves. But then just before, there's a hill, and you go down to a gravel part. As you're going down, that's the location where Chief Highknocker, his second burial, was located. And they eventually did move his bones to Green Lake, they say, although I hear reports from Native people that they moved it where they're never going to touch them again. So interesting, but it's interesting that the story is that when he drowned, before that he let his family know that he wanted to be buried at his favorite place along the river. It was not Berlin, but it was right here on the Fox River, a little ways from my house, in fact. So it's kind of interesting.
So what is that about the second burial? Can you say that again?
Yeah, basically his family moved his bones from where he was buried in near Berlin there, and so they moved him there to honor what he wished, to be buried in his favorite place along the Fox River, and that's where it was. If you would go there, you could see probably why that was his favorite place. But then, the road construction and actually kind of jeopardized where he was buried, and so they moved it to Green Lake, maybe somewhere else. So we can go down there, and actually the next stop will be right at my house. Then I'll talk about Chief Highknocker maybe a little bit more. If anybody has other questions, otherwise we can proceed to get the bonfire started. How's that sound? Maybe have some food. Okay, as far back as 1870, my ancestors came to this area via the paddlewheel boat, and they probably would have been at the second port here, since it was on Huckleberry, and then they came to about a quarter mile down the road from my house here. And then eventually this was owned by the Schwark family, but then my grandfather bought the land. It would have been about 180 acres, so they put it together with their farm, and then this was the place of my safe area. I came back here when I wanted to do a lot of thinking, but the main thing was I went with my dog Rusty, hopped on the bike and came back here fishing, and caught many great fish. A lot of times it was bluegills, bullheads, but would catch bass and northern back here too. And then, so eventually after college I asked my grandfather if I could buy this land, and he agreed to it, and lo and behold, here I am.
Gotcha. So how old is the homestead here?
Well, it was acquired about 1948, and then the homestead where my parents live and my great-great-grandparents lived was in 1870, that they would have owned this land. My great-great-grandmother was a midwife in the area, and she actually delivered Native American babies, and for a reward for helping them out, they gave her beadwork, and we have the beadwork yet today.
Cool.
Just very beautiful. And And so they would have, even though the native people were on their land, they allowed them to continue to live there. But then the men would come on the farm and work, and then as a reward for helping them out, they gave them food every night. So it was just a great situation for everyone, and then unfortunately they forced the native people from here. And this past year, I learned of one of the family names that was here, and the family last name was Goodbear. And there's a lot of families throughout Wisconsin with the last name of Goodbear, and that would have been in the Ho-Chunk native group. So it's amazing what you can find out.
Right. And so before you owned this property, you bought it from your grandfather. Who lived on it? Do you know?
It would have been the Ed Schwartz family. And they would have been here for a lot of times, for a lot of years. How many years? Probably, oh gosh, probably 30 or more years. Why they wanted to sell the farm was their barn burned down, and they just felt they just couldn't recover from that, and so that's where they sold the land to my grandfather.
Got it. So the Disterhaft place is out on Huckleberry, and he has this beautiful meander scar piece of the river back here.
They call it Oxbow Lake.
Oxbow Lake. All right. Okay. Anything else you want to mention on today's tour?
Well, actually, today's tour, one of the highlights was seeing many of the people that was in my 4-H group and leaders from the past join in with the group, and then many of the local people that was interested in the history just down Huckleberry Road.
Very cool. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.